I'm discovering that I can get lost very easily. And I'm discovering all these places in this lovely village called Geddington. It's a very nice village actually, never been around here before. It's not getting lost, it's just discovering places I wasn't likely to see. Hello, my name's Ian and welcome to my channel, The Discovery Biker. I'm stood outside the Triangular Lodge here at Rushton in Northamptonshire, and today is the start of our ride. So let's go see what we can discover. The lodge is set over 3 levels and you enter on the first floor by going up the stairs. Through a door that is a lot older than me, but I have to say is probably holding together better than I am. At the entrance there is a carving going back to the year 1625. I presume it's the year and not the time, as the site closes at 2 PM. The interior is a lot lighter than you'd expect, light coming in through the windows that are well disguised on the outside. It's part of what makes the architecture and what Sir Thomas Tresham did here even more remarkable, considering that he didn't have computers. Off the main room is a smaller room, again well lit, and Roy left his mark. Graffiti from 1625 is okay, but English Heritage will be annoyed if you add your name to Roy's and will probably call the police. And they won't send you a thank you letter in 400 years. This layout is repeated on all 3 floors. From the first floor I went down to these very steep steps into the basement. Down here it is a lot darker and danker as the floor is below ground level. It is one of the things about the lodge that you have to be aware of. In the 17th century they never thought of designing for disabled access. From the ground floor basement I went upstairs to the 2nd floor. By the time I was on the 2nd floor there was some heavy breathing. Glad I could edit it out, or else this would have had to become an age appropriate video. And this would have been the main area for the Warren Keeper to live. And I could still see where the original roof beams would have been. From this side window you can look out over the countryside towards Rushton Hall, and we exit back onto the lawn. The building is impressive but won't take long to look around. I would recommend linking it with visiting another site in the local area, or just treat yourself to some of the local roads and stop off here to give yourself a break. The staff here know their stuff and are happy to have a chat. Right, let's get back on the bike. So I'm starting here at the Triangular Lodge at Rushton, and then we're going across to Lyveden New Bield. If you're interested in this or any of my other routes, download the Scenic App and I will show you how to get those routes off the app so that you too can come and explore and visit these places. Right, let's go discover. One thing I will say, not much parking, very busy road. For a 10-second intro it took a long time to record. Right then. Right, first disclaimer. This is the first travel vlog / motorbike video that I've ever done. So, if you hear a lot of you'll understand that I'm trying to keep it up on 2 wheels and keeping it in the vertical position while I try and keep myself alive, while I try and well, talk to you guys and try and say something a little bit interesting. Maybe it's not interesting, but what I can tell you is the route that I plan today is a route that these roads would have been about 400 years ago. So the designer and the builder of the Triangular Lodge here at Rushton would have used these routes as well. I designed it in the Scenic App, and I'll explain a little bit more about how this channel came to being and what kind of inspired me to want to do this. But right now, let's get past the cyclist and stick to the speed limit, of course. So yeah, the Triangular Lodge, what is a part of the Rushton Hall estate, is now owned by English Heritage. It was first conceived in 1592 by Sir Thomas Tresham. Now, what makes it interesting is, 1, it survived, and 2, at the time, Sir Thomas Tresham was a Catholic, and he was a openly
practicing Catholic, so it was something that followed him his entire life, and he was persecuted because of it. But he was a very rich man, so he kind of got away with it. I wonder if that's open again. Used to be a really nice pub there. Used to do a really nice carvery. So yeah, Sir Thomas Tresham. So in 1559 he inherited his granddad's estate, what was Rushton Hall, and a manor over at Lyveden. Very big estate, lots of farming, and during this time, like I say, he was a practicing Catholic, but he was also a royalist. Anybody who likes their history will understand that after King Henry VIII had got rid of all the monasteries and broke away from the church in Rome, there was a little bit of tension between England and, well, the entire Catholic world, really. And on the receiving end of that was people like Sir Thomas Tresham. So, but however, Sir Thomas Tresham, he was inspired later on in his life to actually show his Catholicism. I'm sure that he was a good Catholic. The idea of the triangular lodge wasn't that he fell out with the builder and wanted 25% off, so the builder just built 3 sides. Well, it could have been actually, but he designed it on the basis of the Holy Trinity. There is symbology all around that lodge as well. Originally conceived in 1592, started building in 1593, finished 1597. We've all employed builders like that, haven't we? And it was done on the basis of the 3 sides, the Holy Trinity. So the warren keeper would stay there, and they would go hunt rabbits and make a lot of money out of it. Let me concentrate, let me get into the middle. So Sir Thomas Tresham was a builder, he was a landowner, and he was very rich. Right, so we're not going down there because that would be too easy. Let's go down here. Nice curvy route. Don't we like them curvy? So Sir Thomas Tresham was inspired to build this lodge. One for his keeper, for his business and for his estate, and the other one was to show his spiritual side. Again, a very dangerous thing to do during those times, but he did it. Now, it wasn't just Sir Thomas Tresham. He had got married to Muriel Throckmorton, and they had a few kids together. Now, his eldest kid, and we'll talk about this a little bit more, Francis, was involved in one of the most infamous acts this country has ever seen. And that was the Gunpowder Plot in November 1605. Now, his part to play in it wasn't great. Now, Sir Thomas oh dear.
Okay, while I sort myself out, I'll show you how to find this ride in the Scenic App. Open the Scenic App and go to the menu in the top left and select Routes. In the middle of the page you can see a plus sign. Hit that and select Discover Routes. Now there's 2 ways that you can find routes by using this interface. If you leave it too big, then it will get a warning message saying that you can only bring back 50 rides, and in this area it'll tell you there is several thousand public rides. If you zoom in too closely then it will give you this message. The route needs to be in the search area, the start and the end of it. Right, let's see how I'm doing if I'm not lost yet.
And actually in front of us is an Eleanor Cross. We're going to be revisiting that. A very important landmark and the best example in the country.
Nope, still lost. In part 2 of this video, I remember about voice navigation, and I'll show you how to turn that on. If you just want to look for this ride, the easiest way is by going into filters and typing The Discovery Biker. This will then bring back the 3 rides so far that I've made public. Click on this ride and download it and you're good to go. The good thing about it is you don't have to work out your own navigation to the start point. When you want to use it, Scenic will ask you where you want to join the ride. So just click Take me to the starting point and it will bring you to the Triangular Lodge at Rushton. And the other routes? Well, this one takes you for a blast around Rutland. And if you're near Yorkshire, then this one is just a blast over the moors, past Hart Peak countryside, past Filendales towards Whitby, but instead of stopping there, it drops you down the coast road and then into Forge Valley and through some lovely winding scenic forest routes. Right, have I managed to get myself unlost? It looks like it. Let's get back to the video.
So Thomas Tresham, big landowner, very rich. His families and the Throckmortons were all interconnected to the highest level in society. It's one of the reasons why he didn't lose everything when he was getting fined. Now, in his lifetime, and when he died in 1605, he was about £11,500 in debt. Just shy of £8,000 of that was down to fines for him not renouncing his Catholicism, for openly showing his Catholicism for him and his family. Now, to put that in perspective, I put into Google last night, £11,500, what's that in today's money? And according to the Bank of England, and we know how good they can be, that is the equivalent of when he died of being £3 million in debt. And according to the records that I read, it was down to his wife who managed the debt, and on her death in 1615 had got that down to £1,000. It's the usual thing, I think, guys. You know, you sat there over dinner and you go, I've had this great idea. I just need to get a little bit of money, you know, to build a house, buy a motorbike, start a YouTube channel. It's always a brilliant idea. Anyway, so that was Sir Thomas, really. Big round these parts, would have been walking around these roads between his estates. And that wasn't the only example. That wasn't the only example of him wanting to be a builder. And we're going to the other one right now, and that is Lyveden New Bield. However, this one was not completed at the time, by the time he died, and it kind of stands as a testimony to what he tried to achieve while he was alive. But Lyveden New Bield was left unfinished because when he died, his estate was in massive debt. So he died in September 1605. So that means his son Francis, what are you doing? Thank you. So that means his son Francis inherited the estate. He was the eldest son. Now, in October that year, he was approached for the first time, according to records, by a couple of gentlemen. Oh, break. So his dad died in September 1605. In October 1605, a couple of friends of his who knew him, leaders of the gunpowder plot, approached him. They needed £3,000 and somewhere to stay. They explained what they were doing. And to be credited to Francis Tresham, he did question the morality of what they were doing, and he didn't give the two leaders, whose names escape me right now, he didn't give the money that was requested from him, £3,000. Well, he couldn't, he had no money, his dad's just died. And he did lend a friend of his money, but he did point out that a couple of his brother-in-laws would be in Parliament. They've explained the Gunpowder Plot and the reasons, and the James I of England and James VI of Scotland had let them down, so he was a Catholic king and they thought that the persecution of the Catholics would stop, but it didn't. And the promises they thought he'd given, the restitution and all that, meant that they had to take matters into their own hand and they would instigate a popular uprising. Francis Tresham questioned the morality of this, saying that I've got two brother-in-laws in there in Parliament and they'll die if this goes ahead. Apparently the response was, well, the good have to die with the wicked. It's just collateral damage, basically. Now, from a drama point of view, this is where it kind of gets interesting. So the plot is going ahead. They've decided they're going to go with it. They all go to London. They've started hiding the powder underneath Parliament. And Francis Tresham may or may have not done something here, and he sent a letter to one of his brothers-in-laws begging him not to be in Parliament for the state opening of Parliament. Just say, make an excuse, disappear, go away, do not be there on the day so that you may survive. Just go back to your estate. Now, this letter was a little bit confusing, so he went to the Secretary of State, handed it to him, to Cecil, the guy called Cecil, and just said, look, what's all this about? This was brought to the attention of the King and they realised something was afoot. Now, just before the state opening of Parliament on the 5th of November, all the main plotters disappeared. They left London, but Francis Tresham and his family didn't. They stayed in London. And on the night of the 4th into the 5th, that's when the barrels of gunpowder was found. And the plot was discovered. Guy Fawkes was there, who was charged with setting the dynamite off, was found. Now, to begin with, Guy Fawkes was like, I don't know what you're talking about. Oh, how did that get there? I've never seen that before. And so the King, even in the 1600s, this was very rare, apparently, but even the King then authorised, because it was only the King that could, torture. Wow, that's very rich. To find out who else the plotters were. Now, Guy Fawkes lasted a while, and then he eventually gave every single name to his torturers, and they were hunted down. Obviously, Francis Tresham was still in London. That was pretty easy. But the rest ended up being hunted down to a house, what we'll go into, won't mention now, we'll go talk about later. And there was a bit of a firefight, and then there was more confessions. Francis Tresham was questioned about whether it was him or not that sent the letter. He absolutely downright refused. Said, nope, nothing, don't know what you're talking about. He gave his version of events, saying that he was only brought on board in October, they only asked for money. He even said that he didn't want it to go ahead. However, he was never going to see freedom again. He was locked up in the Tower of London. Thanks to his family's connections, not just his wife's, but his mother's, His wife and his mother and his family was allowed to leave London, but he stayed, and he would never leave the Tower of London again. And he would never see trial either. So Guy Fawkes is tortured, and the other co-conspirators that have survived, they are put to death in the most brutal and gruesome way. Hung, drawn and quartered. And there's a sign for Lyveden New Bield. So and it's a good job I've got an adventure bike. So yeah, Francis Tresham is now in the Tower of London, and he's giving his confession. His dad's died in September 1605. He's basically been arrested and been investigated for treason. This is in November. The failed plot was November the 5th. Now we get to December 1605, and this is where it gets a little bit interesting. Be careful, be careful. Whee! So in December, in the Tower of London, 1605, Francis is ill. He requests a doctor that knows him because it's an old problem of his. And eventually he gets worse and worse and worse, and December the 23rd, 1605, he dies. On his deathbed, might be worth trying. On his deathbed, a family member takes his deathbed confession. And in that confession, at no point does he mention the letter that went to his brother-in-law. It seems a bit strange to some people, so that questions whether or not he wrote it. But for me, I wouldn't admit to it, because if he does admit to it, his family's finished, because he was involved in a treasonous plot, and not only will the state go, well, you still kind of went ahead with it, but they'd have the entire Catholic community after him as well, especially the families of the co-conspirators who were involved. There's just no win. There's just no win by admitting that it was him. Let his brother-in-law take the celebrations, and you need an adventure bike with this. And for him, why admit it? Why put his own family at risk? But because of that one incident, his dad's death and his death, the building we're just going to see right now never gets finished, and has stood here in this state ever since. It's kind of a testament to that Elizabethan Stuart period. So let's go in and let's have a look. Thank you very much. Morning.
Ready? Drums and colours, march!